And as it started out in the very beginning, I love being able to put the different pieces in place to support our coaches and student athletes to give us an opportunity to be successful at a high level, both academically and certainly on the field of competition.
I tried to first express to our coaches, I've always coached with a servant's heart. That was how I intended to lead our athletic department. So I wanted them to know that I was sitting in the chair here to serve them.
And we have this posted in our office that I try to remind people all the time is that you're impacting somebody's good old days. You know, I really believe that. We get caught up in the day-to-day sometimes. Every day you go to work, you're impacting that experience for somebody else. And I think that's a huge responsibility that we got to wear on our shoulders every day.
You're dialed in to the ABCA's Calls from the Clubhouse podcast, connecting our coaches with some of the best baseball minds in our game. Now here's your host, Jeremy Sheetinger.
We are broadcasting live from the ABCA National Office here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and you are dialed back into our Calls from the Clubhouse podcast where we connect you with the best baseball minds in our game. We are delivering this audio gold to you on behalf of those of you out there seeking personal growth. You're working to take a leap forward today towards your goals, challenge how you think, how you coach, and that's why you're on the other end of this call, and we want to thank each and every one of you guys for checking this out. Supporting this podcast are our proud partners and great friends over at AstroTurf, the leaders in the clubhouse for the turf industry. And again, these folks have been ahead of the curve for almost 50 years. They've transformed over 200 facilities around the country, and guess what? They want to work with you. So check out more information on their website, astroturf.com. See what AstroTurf can do to help take your facility to brand new levels. Now, knowing baseball coaches the way that we do here at the ABCA, we understand how passionate our base can be and clearly focused on building their programs, developing their players, and growing this great game. But with that, at times, comes a tunnel vision viewpoint of what matters now. What's important, what needs to happen for baseball to be successful on their campus, if we can just get some support from our administration and athletic directors. And that's exactly where this episode fits in, as we sought out coaches who had crossed over from the dugout as former successful coaches to now lounging in the big chair, serving as athletic directors, and get their takes on thinking globally, not locally, seeing the big picture across all sports and where baseball fits into that puzzle, but also on how to better communicate with administration as guys who are living in that world right now. We're talking with Jim Peoples from Division III Piedmont College in Georgia, also Ray Tanner from Division I University of South Carolina, and finally Kevin Vest from the junior college ranks at Waubonsie Community College in Illinois. They all sit down on this show to take our listeners through this path of their transition into becoming athletic directors, their reflections on where their mindsets were as coaches and how they've shifted since then, and they each deliver some terrific insight for all of us to clearly explain how we should approach seeing our respective athletic departments and the role that baseball plays. It's just an awesome episode. I'm excited for each of us to digest this information, and let's all be better because of it. It's an episode that'll help all of us put things back in perspective on our campuses. As Jim Peoples from Piedmont College, Ray Tanner from South Carolina, and Kevin Vest from Waubonsie Community College all join today's Calls from the Clubhouse podcast. This great interview is coming at you guys right now. A few years ago, if I were a coach and you told me I had to get on a phone call with 3 athletic directors and talk administratively, I probably would have shunned away from that phone call. But now I embrace it because we're on our Calls from the Clubhouse podcast talking with 3 tremendous baseball coaches that have now transitioned into the dark side. They're on the administrative side of things, serving as athletic directors. It's going to be a fantastic interview today as we sit down and talk with the athletic director at the University of South Carolina, Ray Tanner. Ray, thanks for being on the call with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Excited to have you. We're also joined with the athletic director down at Piedmont College in Georgia, Jim Peoples. Peeps, thanks for being on the call with us today.
Sheets, thank you for including me in this phone call. It's an honor to be on here with Coach Tanner and with Kevin, and looking forward to doing this today.
Outstanding. And last but certainly not least, we're joined by the athletic director at Waubonsie Junior College, Kevin Vest. Vesto, thanks for being on the call with us today.
Sheets, I appreciate you having me.
Well, we're excited, and let's go ahead and just dive right into this because there's so much that I think our listeners and our coaches can gain from this interview. And the first where we want to start, and Coach Tanner, I'm going to let you kick this one off as the elder statesman of the group. We want to make sure we know your career path in baseball, but then what got you there to the big chair at South Carolina?
Well, using elder statesman as two words, I'm not sure that I'm excited about that. But
it's a sign of respect.
I played baseball at North Carolina State, and as soon as my undergrad years were over and I realized that I wasn't going to be playing with the Yankees the next year, I immediately started grad school. And as a grad, in grad school, I was a graduate assistant in the baseball program, which back in the day, you didn't have too many, if any, full-time assistants in the so-called non-revenue sports. I guess we refer to them as Olympic sports today. Mm-hmm. But as part of my duties, I had to do some administration. I sort of had to be a person that helped out with different events, whether it was a football game or whether it was a volleyball tournament that we were hosting, whatever the situation might have been. Now, while I spent my time in the afternoons with the baseball program and doing some recruiting as well, I was involved in a lot of duties that gave me an opportunity to observe what happens in the Department of Athletics across all sports. And I was interested, I was intrigued by it, and I think that's when I got my first flavor of, this is something that I really enjoy, understanding how everything comes together and makes a Department of Athletics at a major university. And as fate would have it, I was an assistant for a few years and then became the head coach. The timing was perfect for me that Sam Esposito was about to retire when I was 27. I had stayed in the program with him, and I continued to work in administration part-time. And then I became the head coach at 27 years old and completely got out of administration. I was doing baseball full-time and did that for 9 years before coming to South Carolina for the next 16. So now I'm completing my 5th year. So long story short, I kind of got my interest in athletic administration in my early years, and then I got away from it. But I did run my program like like it was an enterprise. Where are the expenses? How much do they cost? Are we breaking even? Do we generate enough revenue? Can we be self-supporting? I started thinking a little bit unlike a lot of coaches think. And why I finished my 25th year as a head coach, I had an opportunity to stay here in administration. Lo and behold, it was an opportunity to become the athletics director. I thought I might have a chance to stay as a assistant AD or associate AD, but when Eric Hyman decided to go to Texas A&M, the timing was perfect for me, and I got back into it. It's been so invigorating. It's been so exciting, and I just finished my 5th year. And as it started out in the very beginning, I love being able to put the different pieces in place to support our coaches and student athletes to give us an opportunity to be successful at a high level, both academically and certainly on the field of competition. So that's a long story from the elder statesman.
No, but we appreciate you diving. It's really interesting to hear that you had a taste of it and a flavor for it and certainly came back to the chair. So I appreciate you diving into that for us. And let's move on to Jim Peoples, the athletic director at Piedmont College, who spent majority of your coach career, Peeps, on the Division III level, and now you've had a chance to take over the big chair there at Piedmont. Talk us through that career path.
Well, I was a two-sport athlete back at Westminster College, and at the time Westminster was an NAIA school, so I played football and baseball there, and knew as I was going through my time that I wasn't cut out to sit behind a desk and do the same thing every day. So I knew coaching was somewhere in my future. That's really what I wanted to do, and I had the privilege and honor to play for a legendary college football coach, Joe Fusco, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And coach at the time that I was playing was also our athletic director and was really like a father figure to me. So as we were concluding my senior year there, Coach started working with me to find a path in graduate school that would help me stay in coaching and get into college coaching and lay out a future for me. And fortunately for me, Slippery Rock University at the time had a really solid program, master's program in athletic administration, and Coach was really tight with the folks at Slippery Rock, thank goodness, because probably my GRE test score and some other things might not have gotten me in. So I think Coach opened that door. Mm-hmm. But I went over there and actually was the graduate assistant at Slippery Rock for the dean of the graduate school, and I did recruiting for the graduate school for 2 years, and then would drive back in the afternoon and coach football and baseball. So that was kind of my 2 years getting my master's degree and seeing the administrative side from a different angle, working in for the dean of the graduate school, but then coaching football and baseball, and then getting my master's degree in athletic administration. My first real opportunity then was at Wesleyan University, and I was hired as a coach and an administrative intern. So I worked for the athletic director. I coached football and coached baseball. So when I wasn't coaching, a lot like Coach Tanner, I was involved in event management and helping run the other sports. I had oversight for the athletic facility, so I had to hire all the student workers and make sure people were doing what they needed to do every day, day-to-day operations of the athletic facility. And, you know, that really stoked my interest on the administrative side because I really got to see behind the scenes and really roll up my sleeves and do a lot of that work. And interestingly enough, that second year at Wesleyan, Coach stepped down as football coach after 3 straight national championships and then a 4th where he lost in the national championship game. And I remember picking up the phone and calling him, and I said, Coach, what's going on? And he said, he's like, at some point in your coaching career, you're going to understand. But he said, I've lost my patience. He's like, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job helping these young men be better at the sport. And it's just time for me to step down and move on. And I could not understand that at the time as a young, passionate coach. Well, 20-something plus years later, I kind of understood where Coach was going. The recruiting and all that start to wear on you, and you're looking for, geez, what is another option to keep you involved in athletics?
Sure.
And I had been very fortunate to have the opportunity to stay in administration during my time at Methodist, there with Tom Austin and working in the athletic department at Methodist. And then they hired me here to be the assistant athletic director and head baseball coach 16 years ago. So I always had a hand in administration, and I started to figure out what Coach was talking about losing his patience. So that was really how my path kind of got laid out to wind up where I'm at today.
Very cool. Thanks for unpacking that for us. And last but certainly not least, Kevin Vest, the AD at Waubonsie Junior College, and an interesting path as well, Kevin. And I'm going to let you open that up for our listeners.
Yeah, well, similar to the other two, I think I started in a career and was probably forced into doing a lot of different things. I'd like to claim that I had the same perspective that these two guys did. I looked at it as a way to coach baseball, and I had all these other duties, and I had to make ends meet somehow. And, I don't think it was till later on in my career that I understood the impact that having those other roles in an athletic department really did and prepared me for the job I have now. But, I went to college as a first-generation college student who really didn't know what I was doing and never even thought about working in athletics, never thought about coaching until I had a coach that made an impact on me and stood next to me when I probably wasn't as prepared to be a college student, let alone a baseball player, as I probably should have been. And I think through that happening, I realized that, hey, this is a really cool way to impact lives. Didn't know exactly how to get into it. Graduated with a degree in physical education. Knew I didn't really want to be a high school teacher. And 2 weeks after I graduated, my college coach left for another job. His assistant got the head job and called me and said, hey, do you want to be on my coaching staff? So at 22 years old, I'm in the coaching business. Sheets, I think I made, if I remember correctly, 17 years ago or something like that. But I think I was making $1,500 to coach baseball, and they found me a job in the maintenance shop, like mowing the softball outfield for about $5 an hour. And I was happy as could be, right? Because I'm working in athletics. And I kind of started along that journey and moved around. And at every step, there was always another duty. I worked in sports information for a couple of years. I ran intramurals. I taught a couple classes. And about in 2010, I took the head job at Rock Valley College in Rockford. And that was really the point where I started to get a little more administrative experience and had a great athletic director. Misty Opat was our athletic director, and I'm pretty convinced she might be the best junior college athletic director in the country. But she let me have a lot of leadership responsibilities and really kind of grow into that role in administration, which was something I hadn't really thought about. And then probably the big turning point for me, believe it or not, it's crazy how things happen, but I mentioned Coach Opat. She had to take some time off in the spring of 16 while I was in the middle of coaching because her father was really ill. And it allowed me to kind of step up and even have more leadership responsibilities. And the thing that I learned, I think that really kind of made me realize this is maybe the next step in my professional career, was I had as much fun helping other coaches be successful, and it was as fulfilling as running my own program. And so the job opened up at Waubonsie, and I had some friends in our region that kind of encouraged me to be here, and had no idea whether I'd even be a candidate. Never been an athletic director, as the number one person in my life. And, things happened, and here I am a year later trying to figure out what happened last year.
Well, I'm sure you'll be taking notes on this call with the experience that's on here with us. It's really interesting. You guys turning in your stirrups for slacks. And you always wonder, what's the transition like for a person to walk away from coaching something that all four of us on the call, just baseball rats, love the game, have the sickness, as most coaches call it, and then you're going to hang that stuff up and you're going to take a different role and be away from the field. So, Peeps, I'm going to let you kick this one off for us. What, if you could really single it down to one thing, what's been the toughest transition from you getting outside of practice, outside the game, swinging a fungo, to now just being the athletic director?
The toughest transition for me, Shinky, has just been game day. I lived for game day. I love the competition. Anybody that's had a chance to, play against us knows that I relish game day and wanted to be on the field against the best that Division III baseball could offer. So that's the part that I miss the most. And really, when you play good people, you're playing against quality coaches, and it's those relationships that I've missed. So I've shown up when people are here playing us this year, but that's probably been the most difficult thing, is just the game day.
Sure, very understandable. And then Vesto, now being as athletic director at Waubonsie Community College, what's been the transition for you that's been the toughest? What's the point that you can really single out and say, man, that's the part I'm struggling with the most?
Well, the first one you nailed. I wear a tie a lot more, so my wardrobe has certainly changed. My wife will tell you that. But I think for me, the most important thing, the thing I've struggled with the most, is just trying to figure out how I stay engaged with student athletes on an everyday basis, because when you're coaching, you have that natural everyday interaction with them, and you develop some really close and deep relationships. And I always cared about my players greatly, and not that I still don't have a chance to interact. It's just not the same. Mm-hmm. So, in some ways, very selfishly, I've tried to find ways to engage with our student athletes so that it still fulfills that area of my heart that I know that I'm impacting lives. I'm just doing it in a little bit different way. But, for me, it's that interaction with those kids and looking them in the eyes and knowing that you played a role in their life, similar to the role that my coach played in my life. And so I just try to keep finding ways to do that without intruding on other people's programs.
Sure. Ray, what would you add to that? And again, you've had a few years under your belt now, but what was the toughest transition, leaving the dugout and moving into the big office?
I think the toughest transition for me has been I haven't felt like I have had the opportunity to wrap my arms around all of our programs. When I was coaching one sport, I felt like that, I had my arms around it and I knew every aspect of the program. Now, Don't misunderstand me. I'm not a micromanager, but I did understand all the components. And now with 21 sports, I kind of feel like that I don't get everything that I need on a regular basis to know everything about the sports. And it's more of a passion than it is reality, I think, because I do keep up with them very well and communicate with the coaches. But I catch myself wanting to know more, to understand more as you know, all of our teams participate in the regular season and the postseason. I remember back in the day I worked for the late Jim Valvano, and he made a comment to me one day. He was also the athletics director at North Carolina State at the time. He was a basketball coach. And he said to me one day, he said, there's not enough hours in the day. He said, we really should have 3 8-hour segments. The sleep part is overrated. We don't need to be sleeping. I don't know that we could function very long. But you know what? It made a lot of sense, because I catch myself trying to grasp a hold of a lot of our sports that I'm yearning to know more about and what's going on. Now I keep up with the competition, but as was said earlier, I want to know the athletes better. I want to understand the program more in depth. I feel like I have great communication with the sports, but I feel like I want to know every program like I used to know my own program. I don't know that it's possible. I have a great staff, but that's the thing that makes this transition still challenging today. Is I don't want to hear something that I don't already know about the program in a positive way or a negative way. So I guess it's just the yearning to get my arms around what everybody's doing. It's kind of maybe a little bit crazy, but there's a passion in there for me that I don't want to miss anything that's going on beach volleyball versus what's going on with, NCAA participation in basketball.
Well said, guys. Awesome. Now, Kevin, I want you to start this one, and this is where, for the guys on the call, but also our listeners, we really start to, again, pull back the curtain a little bit, and let's get a little more insight and in-depth into what's going on between your all's ears. And I think the beauty of it, Kevin, especially 1 year out, looking back at your opinions as a coach, and I've been on the other side of that big table in those conversations, and sometimes it's tough to have those real in-depth and really challenging conversations with your athletic director or administration. But if you could put yourself back in those coaching shoes with the perspective you have now, did you always see the big picture as a coach? I mean, how was that communication level?
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting. I think I prided myself on being a team player, and to me that really meant, hey, I'm going to go support our basketball team or our football team or our soccer team, and make sure to go out of my way to congratulate that coach. And I had an opportunity to work for great athletic directors, almost throughout my entire career. But after looking at it now, a year later, I realized how little I understood what goes into decision making. And even though I was, I think, a good team player and supportive of other teams, I mean, let's face it, when I was in my athletic director's office asking for something, it was about me. It was about
Sure.
my program, what I need and what I need to be successful. And I had no understanding probably of, sometimes I'm sitting there with that AD and they're telling me no, and it's not because they don't want to help me, but I didn't understand the impact that decision might have on 3 other things in our department. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's been the biggest juggling act for me as an AD to learn that too is, how do you give all of your coaches, we have 13 sports here, all of our sports, the tools to be successful, realizing that you have resources at some level that are limited, at any level you have a cap on your resources. I can't give everybody everything, because if I give somebody all of this, it's going to affect somebody else. And so for me as a coach, I thought I got it, right? I thought I got it. And I thought that when I was sitting in an AD's office and they told me no, well, that AD just doesn't understand what I need to be successful. And quite frankly, they probably did, and they probably wish they could do it for me. But it meant that somebody else was going to suffer. And that's been the learning process for me, and just trying to educate coaches, because, I've been through it. And there's sometimes you want to say, hey, man, I want to try to help you, and I want to try to find a way to figure this out, but we just can't do that right now. So I think it's been a learning process for me, and it's certainly that, as you mentioned, it's almost like pulling the curtain back, and I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm thinking back to 10 years ago, right, when an AD told me no, and it's like that aha moment. I just realized why that guy told me no.
Coach Tanner, same question, and again, it's really going back to where you sat as a coach. Were you on the same page? Did you see the big picture there as a coach when you had these administrative talks?
Absolutely not.
Good.
I'll tell you, you go back in time, athletics directors, and I'll make a general comment that might not be fair, but a lot of athletics directors concentrated on football and basketball, the revenue-producing sports.
Sure.
And they didn't spend a lot of time on the Olympic sports, and you didn't even see them a lot of times at your events. And I know I don't speak for all athletic directors, but I think that was maybe a commonality back in the day, not so much today. And when I saw an administrator or an athletic director at one of my games, I was kind of like, what are they here for? What
Sure.
What are they looking over my shoulder? I'm doing something wrong. They're not happy with something that's going on. And it was almost while we had a good relationship, I was kind of always on edge when they were around too much. But that probably was very unfair. Now, being a former coach, I think that my coaches understand that I know what they go through.
Right.
The highs, the lows, the adversity, managing a team, managing personalities, the culture, all those things I get. But I like for our athletes to know that I'm there to support them. And I try – one of the things that I use with my coaches is space. And I tell them, I give you space. So if you need me, reach out, call me. Don't feel like that if I'm not right next to you that I'm missing something. I don't care. I go to games. I go to all the events. I do as many as I possibly can. But that doesn't I don't always go to the post-game press conference. I'll go occasionally, but I don't get in their space. I want them to know that I'm there for the student athletes and for them. And I probably spend a little more time visiting with the student athletes around events or practices than I do the coaches. But I don't think that I had a great understanding. What was said earlier about, they want to help you, but maybe they can't. That makes a lot of sense to me that is the case. And, it's one thing that I've emphasized here as being the director of athletics. I want our teams to have a chance to win at a high level. And it doesn't matter to me if it's our women's tennis program or our football team. We still got to provide the opportunity. Sometimes funds are limited, but, we're in a little bit different position that we can almost support our teams at a very high level. And I always talk about opportunities. I don't talk about finishing first. That's hard. That's too much pressure. That creates stress and anxiety. But the opportunities to have a great experience, and then, maybe you do get a chance to finish in the upper echelon of the conference or to finish first. So I think my perspective certainly today is much better than it was as a coach, because I won't say that it was us against them, but I looked at the administration well, what do they have going on? Maybe I didn't understand it as much. And
sure.
I think I try to do a better job of making sure our student athletes and coaches know that, hey, I'm there for you, but I'm not going to be in your space.
Very well said. And Peeps, I know there's some meat on the bone on this in terms of your transition. And again, looking back, were you always on the same page? Did you see the bigger picture within the athletic department?
My experience has been unique because I've had the ability to be pretty much in Division III athletics the entire time. And, in Division III athletics, when you're not giving scholarship dollars out athletically, it's all about the experience that you're able to provide a student athlete.
Right.
So that first opportunity at Wesleyan working for John Biddiscombe, John was outstanding. Probably one of the best athletic directors I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And just he saw the big picture and realized how important it was there during that time to do just exactly what Coach Tanner said, to give all the programs the opportunity to be successful, to work as hard as he could work to make the administration understand these are the things that we need to provide a quality experience and give our student athletes the opportunity to be successful. And then when I moved on to Methodist, I had the chance to work for Rita Wiggs for several years, and then Bob McAvoy took over as our athletic director. And I was there during the time we were having a lot of success in all of our sports, not just in the sport of baseball that I was working with Coach Austin with. And again, it was about giving people the resources that they needed to be successful and providing a quality student athlete experience for each kid, because really in our situation in Division III, each kid matters. Most of us are small privates in Division III, and you're counting on those enrollment dollars, and it's that experience that keeps a kid at your school for 4 years. And really, I think the opportunity they brought me to Piedmont to be the head baseball coach here was Piedmont was in that transition period where they were leaving the NAIA, moving Division III into Division III athletics. And here was really the opportunity that I had to really start working with the administration on making big decisions that impacted our athletic program. And I quickly learned from working with our president here, Ray Clear, that anytime you brought something to Dr. Clear, it had to be a win for the athletic department, but more importantly, it needed to be a win for the institution.
That's good.
Because he had a lot of other people that he needed to make happy. So when we were coming up with ideas or proposals, we needed to see the whole picture, or there was no way we were getting it by Dr. Clear. So it was a wonderful blessing to work for a president like Dr. Clear, because I learned how important it was to be incredibly, impeccably prepared when you were going into a meeting with the president and his upper administration, and that you needed to lay out all your information and have your facts straight so that you could get some decisions that would go your way. So that, I think I've been really fortunate just to be in Division III athletics and have to always really consider that bigger picture.
Sure.
So that part of it has been a little bit easier for me. And I'm very grateful because I've had the opportunity to work with great people and have great mentors. So I'm very fortunate. The good Lord has blessed me that way.
That's outstanding. Now, Coach Tanner, let you kick this off, and you, again, being forthright with how you've gone about it. And it makes sense, guys. I mean, you've moved into being the athletic directors as former coaches. You're very relatable to the people that are underneath you. And so I'm just wondering, how have you gone about, really approaching the department culture, the communication system? If you could continue to kind of unwind that a little bit for our listeners on what's going on specifically there at South Carolina.
Well, as I was saying, I think that no matter what business you're involved with, the university setting, that morale is very, very important. It can't be isolated. I think it has to be part of your culture, that everybody's important. It doesn't matter if somebody's making $50,000 or $500,000 or whatever the case may be. And we've got, our revenues exceed $100 million a year. So do our expenses, by the way. And everything's important. Everything counts. And whether you're on the custodial staff or whether you're the head coach of, our national champion women's basketball team, that everybody matters and everybody plays a role here. And it's not just lip service. I think it's something that people have to embrace. They have to believe in. And when that is the case, everybody enjoys in each other's success, because, we live in a great country, but there's a lot of envy. There's a lot of jealousy. And I think that can exist when you have a big operation or in a big corporation. And certainly athletics is not an exception. So I think it's important that message is always sent loud and clear, that, our beach volleyball team made the postseason for the first time. It's only a 4-year-old program. That's a big deal.
Sure.
And people enjoy that. Coach Staley was out at our softball games this past weekend yelling at the umpires. It's the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah, I saw her on TV.
You can't fake that. It's real or it's not real. And I believe in community service from our student athletes and our coaches. It's part of my estimation, is part of our responsibility being in this community. And I think they really enjoy doing it once they embrace it. But, you let your lives get too busy. You have excuses for not doing things, but yet you have time to do things that are important. And so I think it's the culture of your program, and I'm pleased at this time that I think we do have a great culture. People pull for each other. They go to different events, even though everybody has a crazy schedule. And I think that you're able to bring everybody together and have that synergy where the sum is greater than the total of all its parts. And it's serious. It's an intangible, and it makes your department thrive, and it makes your experience great for your student athletes.
Perfect. And then obviously for the last two, and Peeps, I'll let you start it, going into really wrapping up your first year along with Kevin, how have you gone about, now that you got a chance to put your stamp on the athletic department there at Piedmont, how have you gone about really changing the culture or the communication system within the Lions athletic department?
I think the key is I tried to first express to our coaches, I've always coached with a servant's heart, and that was how I intended to lead our athletic department. So I wanted our coaches to know right away, I've been colleagues with these people for 15 years, a lot of them.
Sure.
And now I'm moving into a role of leadership. And I wanted them to know that I was sitting in the chair here to serve them, because my number one goal was for our athletic program to be successful, and for us as coaches and administrators in this athletic department, that our mission would be to teach young people how to be successful, that we would give them the tools and give them the opportunities through athletics to learn how to be successful in life when they left here, and that we were going to hold each other to high standards. I think when you're clear with your messaging and then you back that up with your action, which is ultimately more important,
sure.
I think that's been the biggest thing that I've tried to do here. And then I gave that same message to our student athletes. I took on leadership of our student athlete advisory committee and really told the coaches, send me your leaders, because I want to work closely with the leadership in each program. And it's been a wonderful opportunity for me to meet with 3 or 4 kids from every program once a week. And we really spend our time talking about how they figure out, number one, what their own leadership skills are, and then how do they manage that within their team. So that's been really exciting for me. And that, I think if you just always are there serving people and being there to help them, and knowing that your door is open so that you can communicate with them, I think what Coach Tanner just said is so important. You want to have a culture of support in your athletic program, and our coaches do. They support each other, and then what you see is our student athletes do the same for one another. And we just got done having our senior athletic banquet, and we did a little video, unscripted, and had our kids, our senior student athletes, on camera talking about what it's meant to be a part of this program for the last 4 years. And probably the thing that made me most proud is almost every single one of them talked about the feeling of family within the athletic department here. And, I went home and told my wife, I'm like, that's a win when that's what the kids got from this, that we wanted them to be successful, but we treated them like family. So, that's what we've tried to do here.
That's powerful. And same thing, Vesto, you're talking about running the Chiefs athletic department, and what have you done to go about really taking that culture, that communication system, again, being a former coach, you've walked in their shoes. How have you approached that there at Waubonsie?
Yeah, I think maybe for me the one difference is I'm the new guy. I wasn't in this department before I had this job. And so that's interesting where, I didn't have pre-existing relationships. I mean, I knew Coach Unger, our baseball coach here. I crossed paths with some other folks, but certainly, I wouldn't say that we knew each other extremely well. And so, one of the challenges for me was, when you're the new guy and you're new on the block, everybody wants to impress the new guy, right? Everybody wants to impress the new boss. And I think one of the things I figured out early on was that it had created this almost fear of failure, right? Go on for a long time talking about how I think society these days, and even especially with our youth, that we don't create environments where people can fail. And in my first couple of months in the staff meeting, one of the things I addressed was simply this. I said, God, I'm a former baseball player. I'm a former baseball coach. I mean, we're used to failing. We got out 70% of the right. So don't feel like I'm gonna look differently at you when you're trying new things and you fail. And I told him, I said, if you don't fail, you don't have lofty enough goals in a lot of ways. If you're not failing a little bit, and so I think for me the first thing was trying to create that culture where everybody felt comfortable and empowered, where they can go do their job and they're not simply just out trying to impress the new athletic director every day. So I think that was a big part. And then I think from a communication standpoint, I took over for an individual who had been here for 39 years. And, I think anytime you have a new person in place, they're going to communicate in a different aspect, whether it's, text messaging and social media. And I think one of the things I really try to do was tell them, I'm accessible essentially 24/7. And I love what Coach Tanner talked about earlier about taking notes. I love what Coach Tanner said about space.
Sure.
I think that's unique to leading a culture, is that balancing act between making sure that people know that you're supportive, that know that you're behind it, but also giving them the space that they need to grow and develop and move on. And so, ultimately for us, the thing that we talk about every day is, are we serving our student athletes and serving our institution? And like Coach People said earlier, the comment about family, our biggest compliment as we end the year here is when we have sophomores at a 2-year institution tell us they wish this was a 4-year school and they could stay here for 2 more years. And that's how I know we're doing things right. That, that's for us, that's our compass, is are student athletes happy and are we serving them well? And I think so far we're doing that.
Okay, now this is a powerful question, and all three of you, I'm very excited to hear what you would offer, again, from the seat you sit in looking back. And again, the ABCA, and you know what our coaches are and who they are. But here it is through the podcast form. And Peeps, I want you to start us off. What's the message that you sit as an athletic director that you would offer any coach, young assistant to experienced head coach and anyone in between, that would, again, help them communicate or see the bigger picture or look at things differently to really enhance their relationship with their personal administration and athletic director?
I think for me personally, I think back to being a player first and foremost. And I mentioned my head football coach, Joe Fusco, who he was a father figure to me. And I was more than just a football player on his team. And he made sure that he challenged us to greatness, every single one of us. So that really stayed with me. And when I got into the coaching profession, it just had to be about getting to know each young man, each kid in your program, and being willing to do whatever it took to help them be what they were capable of being. And that it wasn't about me, it was about how I could help them become who you saw them possibly being in life. And now as the athletic director, it's trying to help each of our coaches see that in their players, and then me coming in behind as a support system to do that. It's more about hoping that they're going to be better people when they leave you than when they came in. And, the successes and the failure on the field, that's just one piece of it. It's just sending better people out into the world. I think that's what Coach did for me as a young person. I am forever and eternally grateful that I had the opportunity to play for him for 4 years and then coach with him for 2 years. But I know it wasn't just my life. I still talk to a lot of my college teammates, and they're in leadership positions, and we all talk about the things that we took from Coach that we use now in the leadership roles that we are in. So that's what I would say. This has been the greatest experience. I would never want to do anything different in life. My wins are finding out when kids are having, guys that played for me have their first child, or getting that invitation to go to their wedding and be a part of their special day. Those are like better than any win you could ever have on the athletic field, is being a part of something special in somebody's life. So that's what Coach was for me, and I hope that's what I have been and will continue being, moving forward.
Sure. And Kevin, same type of question. Again, if you're talking to coaches that are listening to this podcast, and from where you sit, your perspective changing completely, what would you offer them in terms of how they approach their athletic directors, their administration? What would you offer to them as some advice?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, you talked about communication earlier, and I've worked with a provost one time. I've never forgot this quote, and he told me that when people talk about poor communication, they're always blaming other people, right? And they never point the thumb at themselves and say, we're not communicating well, it's my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. So, I try to take that approach from my standpoint with our coaches and with our staff, but I also encourage our coaches to own that and take that approach. And the one thing I've said that I probably didn't do well, even going back to our earlier question about not understanding administration, but come with solutions. You know,
Great
it's
point.
really easy to figure out, you know, what the problems are. You know, I tell people all the time, my 9-year-old daughter can identify a problem. She struggles sometimes finding a solution to it, right? So, like come with me, and I'm willing to try to help, but you got to try to help me figure out what the solution is that helps us get better and move forward. And so that's probably the biggest thing I tell our coaches is I'm willing to listen to anything. I'm willing to you know, open my mind to different ideas and out of the box thinking, but you got to bring me a solution. And then ultimately you got to bring me a solution, as I mentioned earlier, that's good for student athletes and good for our institution, you know, and that's one of the things that I'm on all the time is what's good for somebody else may not work here. So you got to tell me why it works here for our kids. And to Coach Peoples' point, are we going to impact positively our kids with this solution? I think once you do that, your athletic director is going to listen to you, you know, instead of just being the guy that comes in and says, hey, I need more money in my budget for this, and so on and so forth.
They don't always hear that one. And Coach Tanner, I mean, certainly last but not least on this question, what would you offer those coaches that are paying attention to the show in terms of how they would approach their current administration and probably get a little bit further down the line than they would otherwise?
Well, I've heard a little bit of it already from the other two gentlemen. I think it boils down to impact, passion, and relationships. And, you know, when you're in this profession as a young coach, you got to be in it for impact. You can't, you know, it's not a hobby. It's a lifestyle. Should there be work-life balance? Absolutely. But it is a lifestyle, and you have to be immersed into the opportunity to make an impact in young people's lives. And, you know, whether it's how to turn a double play or shoot 90% from the free throw line, that's just a piece of it. It's the impact about what they're going to be in years to come. They're young people. They're student athletes. Their lives are being shaped. Athletics is a part of it, but it's not all of it. And I think that the impact part is very significant. You know, you've often heard that people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And when that is the case, I think that the lives of student athletes are more enjoyable. The experience is great, and probably what goes along with that is success. And, you know, when you have those relationships where you can take a no, when you know what the problem is, but you don't know what the solution is, and you understand that, but your relationships are such that you have with your administration that they understand you, they want to help, they might not be able to, but you're okay with it. You're okay that, you know, you don't always get a yes, you don't always get a victory either. So, you know, that's just part of it. But, you know, the passion part, you know, it has to be one of those deals where you can't wait to get to work every day. You know, you know, there's so many people in our country today that a large percentage probably, if you ask them, do you enjoy going to work, and they would tell you, what are my options? So, you know, being in athletics, whether you're coaching or administration, it has to be about passion. And I think in many cases that it is. Does that mean that we don't complain from time to time? Of course we do. But you know, my mom tells me to this day, she said, you've never really had a real job. And I said, seriously? But she says, you love what you do. You've always been in athletics. You played, and you never did anything else in any capacity. Yeah. And, you know, not many people get to live that kind of life. And so I think that you bring the ingredients to the table that you've already heard about, but the impact, the passion, and the relationships are very, very crucial to the success that you're going to have.
This is our last question, guys, and you've crushed it so far, and I know you will not disappoint on this last point. We always like to end our show with advice. So, again, from where you guys sit in your different experiences through coaching, through administrative, but from where you sit right now and you're talking to the 23-year-old version of yourself, but also the 23-year-old version of all the listeners that we have that are out there within the ABCA and our podcast, what advice would you offer them? And Coach Vest, I want you to really kick this one off for us. What advice would you offer that might set them down on a different path and a more positive approach to this coaching profession?
Yeah, well, I give you two real practical things, and I'll give you something really philosophical. But, you know, I think the first one, and we've hit on it, it's kind of interesting for me, not knowing these two gentlemen's backgrounds, is just get every bit of experience in every aspect you can. whether it's sports information or the budget or whatever, because it's going to make you a better coach. It's going to make you run a more efficient program, but it's also going to help you relate to those people inside of your department. You're going to have a better understanding of what that sports information does on a day-to-day basis and how he impacts your program and ultimately your student athletes. And then, the second one is I say this all the time, I said it to my assistant coaches all the time. Same thing we tell our players, you never know who's watching, right? Mm-hmm. When I was a JUCO coach, you never knew who was in the ballpark that might help you get to a four-year school, whether it's an umpire, a fan, or whatever. And I tell our coaches that too, you don't know the connections if you're our soccer coach that the basketball coach has or vice versa. So get to know those people, create relationships with those people. When I was coaching, I would tell assistant coaches, I probably got more phone calls a year looking for a reference about a guy in another sport besides baseball, because they'd say, hey, you worked with this guy at this school. What was he like? And they want to know from somebody who experienced them outside of the program. And so I think don't just walk up and down that hallway and think, I just want to be the best hitting coach in the world and not pay attention to, our women's golf coach. Get to know those people, create relationships, and treat them the right way. And then, the last thing, and we have this posted in our office that I try to remind people all the time is that you're impacting somebody's good old days. I really believe that. That we get caught up in the day-to-day sometimes, and we have to remember 18 to 22-year-old student athletes, and this is going to be their good old days, right? The same way we look back, we've all talked about our experience as athletes and young coaches. Every day you go to work, you're impacting that experience for somebody else, and I think that's a huge responsibility that we got to wear on our shoulders every day.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Coach Tanner, same question. Advice for young coaches that are out there listening to this show, what would you offer those guys?
What I just heard I think is significantly important is you have to understand everybody who works in the Department of Athletics. They're different units, whether it's sports information, sports medicine, compliance, whatever the case may be. Understand their roles, know them, appreciate what they do. They're there to help. They're support staff for student athletes. And I think the better the relationship, the more opportunities you have to have a great experience. If I had to pinpoint one thing, reflecting back on my career, I always like to think that I'm an old school guy, and I have evolved as this time has gone on. And there have been changes in society, and I'm not saying that young people have changed. I don't know that that's always the case. I think sometimes we change, and that's not the important point. The important point is I believe that young coaches really have to take the time to get to know their student athletes. They're all different. While you may have the same rules and the same discipline, you have to get to know your student athletes away from the field of competition and know what makes them tick. I spent my 16 years as a coach here with a sports psychologist that traveled with us a lot, and he helped me understand the dynamics that I was dealing with. I was a better coach because of I had more information on my players. I knew more about them, not personal stuff, but just what made them tick, what didn't make them tick, and those relationships go a long way with how comfortable they are and creating, as we just heard, the good old days. And that's, I think that's very important. I can reflect back on the time, where whatever the coach says goes, and you run through a wall, you don't ask any questions. I don't think that is the case anymore. I think that the relationships are more critical than they ever have been. You live together, you die together, you win together, you lose together, you hurt at the same time, and you celebrate at the same time. And I think it is a little bit different. So if I had to give a young coach one piece of critical advice, get to know your student athletes very, very personably, where you respect each other, but you know who they are versus just a guy who turns a great double play. So I think that's critical in this day and age.
Awesome stuff. And Peeps, take us home on this one, my man. Advice for young coaches that are paying attention to the show.
Well, I think they've just got two great things from Kevin
Absolutely.
And from Coach Tanner. But I think what I would add to that is have a passion for learning. Never lose your passion for learning. And what I see a lot in young coaches is they want to be good in baseball in particular at one part of the game, I would say just throw yourself into the game completely. Don't be the best hitting guy. Learn as much as you can about pitching or about catching or infield play or outfield play or the running game. Know the whole game. So having a passion for learning will make you want to dig deeper into the game. I mean, put as many tools in your toolbox as you possibly can. To Kevin's point, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was to go watch good coaches run their practice. So as a young coach, I would go sit in and watch our basketball coach run basketball practice. We had a great volleyball coach here when I got the job at Piedmont. I used to love to go in and watch him run practice. You can learn so much from great coaches. It doesn't have to be in your sport about how they put their practice organization, how they build on an individual skill to a group skill to a team concept. So don't think that you can't learn something from coaches in other sports. There's a ton that you can learn, and just sitting in and watching people run their practice is a great way to learn. And then probably the last thing that I would say is always have a mentor. Always have somebody, and you're going to always be evolving in the coaching profession, but there's going to be somebody who's been at that stage of life that you're about to step into. Keep having good mentors. And I try to still, to this day, seek out good mentors now that I'm in administration full time. People that have done this a lot longer than I have. You want to have good mentors who you can lean into, that you can call when you have a tough question or you're dealing with a tough situation. Don't be isolated, because this profession is all about relationships. Kevin said that. There's so many people that can benefit you moving forward in this profession and growing the right way. So having quality mentors, I think, is really key. And then I wouldn't never close yourself off to something. I still go out and work camps, and I love to pick the brains of the younger coaches now today, because I want to see what they're doing. What is cutting edge? So always know you can learn something from everybody that you're around. Just be out there and have, like I said, have that passion for learning. Never lose that passion for learning.
Mm. This is a win in two very distinct levels. Number one is, for our listeners, they just got absolutely schooled by guys who have been in their shoes and are now athletic directors. Number two, and maybe the most important for me personally, is I could never carve out an hour with an athletic director in my coaching career, and I just did it with 3. So, I'm absolutely fist pumping in the office that we had a chance to sit down. Guys, we cannot thank you enough for your time and your commitment to the ABCA period, but also to jump on this show with us. We've been talking with Ray Tanner from South Carolina, Jim Peoples from Piedmont College, and Kevin Vest from Waubonsie Community College. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. We wish you the very best, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Sheets, thank you. Ray, Kevin, it was a pleasure being on here with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is a powerful episode if you were truly listening. I'm talking about baseball coaches that have transitioned from the dugout now into the big chair athletic directors, and they're giving us their insight from where they sit. Big thanks to Jim Peoples from Piedmont College, Ray Tanner from South Carolina, and Kevin Vest from Waubonsie Community College for those guys taking time out of their schedules to sit down with us on our Calls from the Clubhouse podcast. If you were taking notes during that episode, there are a ton of takeaways, great notes from these men. But I think one of the biggest points came there towards the end from Kevin Vest when we talked about we are all coaching someone else's good old days. And if we take that approach into how we deal with our players, deal with our programs, how we approach each and every day, I'm sure we're going to get the best out of ourselves, and we're going to give that to our kids and our program. So we appreciate you guys sitting down with us. Again, we know your schedules are packed. Thanks for making time for the ABCA, and we appreciate all 3 of you guys being loyal and proud members. Another huge thanks to our great friends over at AstroTurf, the leaders in the clubhouse for the turf industry, and their support of our Calls from the Clubhouse podcast. If you want more information, give these folks a call. Go to their website, astroturf.com. That's astroturf.com. Find out why they've been ahead of the curve for almost 50 years. And remember, as always, this podcast is for you. We love how these fit into your schedules any and everywhere. So here's the rundown on how you can stay up to speed on each and every show. Number one, head over to iTunes or Google Play, subscribe to the show. It'll show up on your phone every Tuesday we put the brand new show out. It'll be right there waiting for you when you're ready to listen. Number two, stay plugged into our website, abca.org. If you click on the Education tab at the top, Calls from the Clubhouse podcast link's going to be right there waiting for you. You'll see all that terrific content, the guests that we've had on. Click on the one you want to hear. And number three, give us a follow on Twitter, at ABCA1945. You'll see the release of our show. We're going to pull some of the best quotes from that show, release those throughout the week. But again, that's how you stay up to speed on what's going on with our podcast. Now, looking ahead to this coming Monday, July 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we want you to plug into your Twitter and let's all connect on our next hashtag ABCA chat. This is an opportunity for coaches from all over the world to check in with one another, network, connect, and we're all sharing information and insight as we ask questions and the coaches on our chat provide their answers and their insight. It's been a powerful platform for all of us to help grow our game, but we're also growing our coaches. We're enhancing their development. It's only for an hour. I promise you'll have a great time. You'll learn a lot, and you'll also connect with a lot of great baseball men. It's an opportunity that we don't want you to see slip past you as we look ahead to Monday, July 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you check in on our next hashtag ABCA chat on Twitter. Again, make sure you're following us on Twitter at ABCA1945. You can also find me on there as well at Coach Sheets 3, or you can reach me directly by email sheets, SHEETS, at abca.org. Got a lot of great messages, a lot of great emails that have come through the last few weeks, guys. We truly do appreciate that. Try to get back to you as soon as we can on that because we know you're making time to reach out to us. Guys, we love to reach back out to you and connect with our loyal base. What we'd love to see you do as well is as you listen to these shows, tweet at us. Make sure you tag at ABCA1945 and let us know how these shows, the content, the guests, the message hit you between the eyes. Let us know that. Shoot us a tweet, shoot us a message, shoot us an email. Also, we want to make sure you know about our upcoming ABCA Barnstormers Clinics tour as we approach the fall, with plans to hit 20 different cities across the Midwest and the Carolinas. And these are one-day coaching clinics. We give our coaches in attendance 7 clinics from the area's best clinicians, on-field demos, teaching segments as we try to cover every fundamental across the day. You're going to become a better coach, but we want to see you at the ballpark. Come check out our website, abca.org/clinics. If you're looking for more information about our upcoming Barnstormers Clinics tour this fall. Lastly, this is the podcast for the American Baseball Coaches Association and the over 8,000 coaches worldwide that we represent. We hope if you're listening to this show, guys, you've already joined our fraternity here at the ABCA. But if you haven't, go to abca.org. Check out the extensive membership benefits. If you got questions, reach out to us. We'd love to get you involved in what we're doing here at the ABCA and all the great things we're doing for our coaches and our game. And as always, guys, thank you for listening in. We truly appreciate you staying dialed into our Calls from the Clubhouse podcast. And until next week, we ask that you keep growing, you keep developing, keep challenging your why, keep challenging what you're doing in this game. We wish you and your club the very best, and thank you for what you're doing for the game of baseball.